Welcome to the AI Ireland podcast, your window into the world of AI innovation on the island of Ireland. Join us as we explore how AI is harnessed to tackle both business and societal challenges, revealing the cutting-edge solutions emerging from this vibrant AI community. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and insights in the world of AI. Hello everyone, it is Mark Kelly here. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Welcome to the AI Ireland podcast. Today we've got Kate Minogue joining us on the show, and Kate is working as a strategy advisory consultant and also a fractional executive, and she has worked in places such as Meta, Bank of Ireland, and she's also got an MBA from Smurfit Business School. Kate, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Really excited about the chat.
So you're working in that kind of advisory consultant role where you've kind of weaving between the strategy, data, employee leadership aspect, and helping customers try to get a return on income. And ideally could you just throw AI at it and solutions would, provide great insights, you'd make significant more money, and all the top executives would be happy because they saw an ML project on TV that showed how you can generate the income in that. But it turns out it's a little bit more tricky on that. And there's a few different snares that people can fall into within businesses that can take them away from their core, which fundamentally can probably be more bad than good.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually think one of the biggest issues is where executives think, what can I use AI and machine learning for, instead of I have a problem and is this the right solution for it? And I definitely think in the last 2 years that's accelerated, and just people knowing the term generative AI or conflating the term generative AI with general AI has led to an increase in executives saying, what can I use AI for? Where can I get the money from an AI that I think my competitors are getting? And generally in my work, I probably end up coming in really as a bit of a party pooper, because it's like, okay, can we slow down and go back to the why? Like, can we just take a step back at like what you're trying to achieve as a business and see if AI is the right solution for that, or when AI will be the right solution for that? Because I think sometimes it's just not understanding the foundations of data, where their systems and people are at, how things connect to each other is ultimately where things fall. And I think that's where I've just found a lot of really interesting projects in the last kind of 6 to 9 months, where I feel like I can help people join those dots to get to a better outcome with AI.
Yeah, because you can imagine every executive is asking, what's your AI strategy? How are you leveraging that? But it's a lot less glamorous to say, well, actually, you know what? We're going to spend 9 months tagging data, cleaning it, and then we're going to spend the next 3 or 4 months to try to figure out the model. And then we're actually going to put it into production. And there's going to be a thing called drift. And that means we have to kind of take it out again, fix it. And we could be 2 years before we get an amazing outcome. How does that sound? And as you can see, people's eyes are rolling and they're just thinking, this isn't the journey that we want to go on. And a lot of the times you can do it quicker and smarter than that. But it also is about being honest about going, well, actually, this is the real why, and this is the North Star we need to get to. There are certain milestones that we need to go to within that. Kate, you've had kind of experience in finance, you've had experience in kind of e-gaming, ad tech, all those different types of shapes. How do you think that's given you different perspectives when you're speaking to customers?
I think that having that diversity of problems to solve is a big thing, where I can kind of look at, say, new problems that come up and say, I've come across similar issues to this. I've come across similar obstacles that have come down the tracks. And I think that they have allowed me to see it from a couple of different perspectives. So the work that I started out in both Paddy Power and Bank of Ireland was very much focused on customer analytics, customer data science, whether that was through marketing, sales, or product. It was, what is the behavior of our customers? How can we either understand that or impact that? And I still to this day believe those are some of the most important questions for every single business to ask, because regardless of who your customer is, you don't have a product or a business without your customers. So making sure that you can really understand them and really listen to them. That's one of the things that machine learning and analytics allows us to do. Yes, some of the more sophisticated things will allow us to also impact that or kind of predict or prescribe that. But at the end of the day, it's about understanding what's the customer going to do, how are they going to interact. And a lot of the unsexy work that happens in that is also what is the customer comfortable with when it comes to AI and machine learning. And that's something that we've had to speak about a lot more in the last couple of years. Say, it's not the last couple of years now, if we think back to when GDPR came in, but even more recently, there's constant changes in the regulatory landscape, which is listening to the consumer desires of what they do and don't want their customer to be used, their data to be used for, or how much control they have over it. So I think that those kind of early roles really kind of positioned me in that consumer first mindset. And that's something I try to take through to any kind of a project I'm working on. When I moved into Meta, my role was quite different. It was external facing. It was working with gaming and app companies that advertised on Facebook and Instagram. And it was very much about top down, how are you using data analytics science to be better marketers? And in the first couple of years, that was very much around executive decision making on budgets. So can you use data to introduce a competitive advantage in terms of, you know, what you get out of that last dollar in your advertising? But a lot of things happened over those few years in the landscape, whether it was about AI, about data, or about marketing, that ultimately meant we had to tackle very different industry problems. So when we talk about AI and how new AI is, people seem to forget that Google and Meta have been powered by AI advertising for a good decade now. Now, it's been improving in sophistication, but it's always been the foundations of their business. And I worked with some of our most data sophisticated advertisers in gaming and app. And the reason they were data sophisticated is because they were born digital. They had user level real time data for everything from their genesis. So they never had to live in a world that was, you know, can we use data or add data into this? They just had it to begin with. So the questions they were asking were actually very much around, tell us the secrets of the AI. We want to understand exactly what's happening in that black box. And I got an opportunity to lead a global task force on demystifying the auction, as we called it, or the algorithm, because it might sound concerning when you say it out loud, but even the people that built that don't know exactly how it makes decisions or optimizes ultimately. And that gave me such a good lesson in how do we actually interact with AI? Like when it's in full production, full deployment, it's at its most powerful. How do businesses, experts, stakeholders, end users interact with it? And I think it's something a lot of people take for granted is like, it'll be out there and it'll do its job and everything will be great. But it can confuse things if it doesn't do exactly what you thought it would do. And I cannot count the amount of times I was on a call with an advertiser and they said, last week the AI did this, so we thought we could predict that it would do that again. And now this week it's doing something different. And you're like, that's the machine. Like, at what stage are you going to get
Yeah.
comfortable with that?
Yeah, and this is where, you know, you're looking at kind of these explainable models where you're able to, you know, kind of show this is how it's making those decisions. But from the people I work with and engage with day to day, they don't know how it's really making those decisions, right? So if you put that on a billboard and say that out on a meme, people are kind of laughing and joking, but there's a lot of truth to that. So this is where regulation comes in. And also customers really want that personal experience, and you want to find that desired avatar, and you want to give those best experiences. But there is the opting in for that, and then making the decision to opt in. And with companies under so much pressure, they can kind of get a little bit gray in terms of, well, they opted in for that. Maybe they might like this as an additional feature, but they didn't opt into it. And then
Yeah.
you need to start to say, well, actually, is that going outside of people's rights, and are you infringing on that? And what stakeholders are in the room debating that out before something comes along within it. When you look at customers, generative AI is obviously so important now. We've had over 24 billion invested in it last year, and a lot of people say that's because of ChatGPT having a kind of a consumer interface where people are able to see the value of that very, very quickly. But that's kind of like a speedboat in a swimming pool when people are just trying to figure out how to use basic data analytics, data science, machine learning, because you mentioned companies like Meta, Paddy Power, you need a lot of data for that. And companies don't necessarily know how to access their own data points.
I saw a statistic recently, I think it was around the medical industry, that said 95% of data they collect is not used in models. Like that means that we're really using very small amounts of what we collect. And if you think about that from a European perspective, GDPR will come at you very fast if you are collecting data for no reason. Like we really need a data strategy. And I think that's why when people say AI strategy, I'm like, after data strategy, you have to have a data strategy, and that has to include all stakeholders. Like I think a lot of what's happened in the last year is how can we keep the shareholders happy by showing we're doing the latest tech thing. And in fairness, the good thing about generative AI and ChatGPT is there's a lot of low-hanging fruit where like an employee can integrate a third-party tool. And in a lot of cases, as long as they're not using their own data, it's low risk. Like it can be de-risked. But I think that when people really think about data, like we talk a lot about user level data, that's where I think everybody's most nervous, because I think it's where most of the fines and most of the noise and most of the regulation has been. But I don't think people have even caught up to, well, if I'm building generative AI, do I actually have permission to use all of the different sources that are going to go into that model? Like we saw the Google Reddit partnership as like one of the big paychecks, one of the big bang announcements. It led to really bad results and really bad outcomes for users. And the one really good thing I think about all of the hype and the user interaction and the customer interaction with ChatGPT is it's actually brought a new language to users around accuracy that they didn't have with things like Meta's AI or predictive analytics that were maybe in the back end of the companies they were interacting with. This is the first time where they can see very explicitly how accurate is what I'm getting or what my data is being used for. And I sometimes wish we had a way to have that conversation 10 years ago when predictive analytics was having its hype or when optimization was happening, because I don't think all executives are equipped to have the conversations about trade-offs and accuracy. I don't think users are, but I think when they see really weird outputs from generative AI, it starts to sow the seeds of them understanding that. And they ultimately need to not just ask questions about, is my data used? Am I comfortable with that? But also what trade-offs were made in the actual model? Like what were the decisions made around accuracy? Because that is something that was not in the layperson's language until now.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the accuracy, as a consumer, you might spot something to go, "Well, actually, that sounds way off. I'm going to flag that." But it's where it sounds, oh, that sounds about right, but it's actually wrong. That's
Close, yeah.
giving you insights that you go and make a decision, because we want to have next best decisions. And the only way we're going to get them is proper insights.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big area. But it's kind of also kind of guiding us towards maybe a smaller data set that we know that's factual and we know
Yeah.
that's correct. And it although it isn't as exciting to say, well, we got this size data set, at least you know that data set you can look to build on top of that. And that's probably where you can start to have synthetic data that's kind of aligned with that you can maybe go to the next story on that. And there's quite a bit of excitement around small language models. I'm really excited about what Google introduced about Gamma, and then we have obviously OpenAI's Mini, and then you've got kind of Microsoft with 5.3. That was previously 5.2.5. So this seems like you've got the opportunity to do this outside of the cloud. It's going to cost a lot less and also better for the environment. But you've got a smaller data set that you actually feel like, actually, you know what, this is something we can build on and then do it right.
I share your excitement. I think that phase of generative AI is where things are actually going to get super useful. Like it's going to go beyond the hype and the, okay, we're all playing with it a little bit and seeing whether it gives us what we need, to introducing an expertise into it. Like all of a sudden there's a verification, there's a trust, there's a, you know, a actual use of AI to combat misinformation versus it being the driver of misinformation that we've had for not just since generative AI, but even when it was an optimization tool and it was able to feed that on social platforms. We can try to channel that technology to do the opposite. And that's something that the founders and I in Frekkel are really excited about, because one of the reasons that I came on board with Frekkel as the chief product officer is I could see shared values with the founders about the role of information and technology for users. And they don't want AI for AI's sake. They don't want an exploitation of user data because they can. What they want is to use the best of information and technology to democratize access to health and skincare. And to me, that's exactly back to the conversation we had at the start, which is how long are you willing to wait for the AI ROI? And if that's 2 years, can you deliver value to users in the interim? And you absolutely can. You can deliver it with small data. We all look away from the small data. We look away from the insights. We want the shiny object. The executives want to show it to their shareholders. But what they want is consumer impact. And I think that's ultimately got a lot more potential than just AI. And I think if you're asking the questions in the right way and you're really thinking about technology and information, not AI and user data as the solution to the problem, then the AI and user data will come in a transparent and mutually beneficial way. And I just think that's a more resilient
Yeah,
way to build these things.
it's quite interesting because Apple talked about Apple Intelligence, and again coming back to that kind of user experience, that user first, rather than it's the AI. When you think about data, you think strategy, setting up from that leadership perspective, but also the third part of that is the employee experience and getting ready and adopting and kind of thinking about that new way of work.
One of the things that I studied when I did my MBA was around the diffusion of innovation. And it was something that really resonated at the time because having worked in Meta and faced out to our clients and our partners who built automated advertising and then tried to sell it to the people whose jobs it would replace. Like, if that's not the perfect example of how an employee interacts or has power over the AI that's adopted, I don't know what is. Because when you think about diffusion of innovation, you are not thinking about CEOs. You are thinking about the individual on the ground whose job changes because of the technology that you've introduced. And I think we're seeing a lot of like grassroots, okay, we're all going to use ChatGPT to try to make our roles easier. We're going to introduce Copilot. Maybe I can like expedite my coding if I do X, Y, and Z. So there's a lot of fragmentation today around how employees are using this. But the biggest job for leadership is going to be to look across the organization, to look across the operations, and to give the psychological safety for them to fail and share. Because if they're doing it secretly, they won't share when they fail because they'll be too worried to, and then nobody learns. And the second is to update processes and systems in a realistic way, because after Apple made its changes in 2021 to data privacy and data sharing across iPhones and the Apple ID, we found with the advertisers I was working with, because they were so data driven, they hadn't really built in the buffer of what if I don't have the data immediately? What if I do have two different sources of truth to use? What if me and my teammate are using different tools or working in different ways? It was not an intellectual break in what do we do now. It was purely operational. It was purely cultural. It was, I am incentivized on these KPIs and they come from this source of truth. So this new one doesn't sit anywhere. Or I am not given a week to make a decision where you're telling me to use machine learning to close the gaps in my data set. So I think leadership have to take a step back and think, what space do our teams need? What are the right expectations? And how can we actually build this in a way that isn't fragmentation? It doesn't just add more tools. It doesn't add more complexity, but it can be done smoothly and it can be done in a test and learn way.
Yeah, because there's always these unintended consequences, and people will start to use technology in the best way that is going to serve them,
Yep.
rather than the way we think it's going to play out. This year, you're a judge for the AI Awards, which we're really, really excited about, and applications are open now. What do you most look forward to with judging this year's applications?
Like, what a year to be involved in the AI awards. And we've had such an acceleration of innovation and just adoption and ideas. I'm really excited to see how the companies, the applicants, the teams balance that innovation with necessity, impact, and ethics, because I think that's going to show the people who are really thoughtful about this technology, the people who will have long-term impact and long-term ROI, are the ones that are not kind of tacking AI on top of something that maybe didn't need it, but have thought through the why, have thought through the impact to the 360-degree users, stakeholders, everyone that it touches, and that really think about the ethics of the data in and the data out. Because to me, those are the questions we have to ask in every single instance of AI. And those are the questions sometimes we can skip over if we're technology and solution first.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I think although you may see this as going slower initially, by having everybody in the circle at the start, by the time you go through that, you're going to have more impact as well, which is wonderful. Kate Minogue, strategy consultant and also fractional director. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Greatly appreciate your time and effort. Lovely getting your insights from wearing those different hats, working in e-gaming, technology, ad tech, and then financial services as well. Kate, thank you again.
Thanks, many, Mark. It was great chatting.
On the 26th of November, join us for the 6th Annual AI Awards at the Marco Hotel in Dublin. This year's event promises to be our largest and most impressive yet, with over 300 community members in attendance and over 48 applications of AI in action. This truly is an incredible world-class event, and we are inviting you to this event. Experience the excitement live, because we're going to be capturing this with a world-class film crew, and it's going to be streamed online. However, if you want to join us in person, book your table now, because opportunities are limited. If you're interested in sponsoring this year's awards, please contact me at Mark@AI Awards for more information and see the best in class of AI applications on the island of Ireland.